It was an ordinary morning, and yet it was the day my life would split into two, before and after. The news came suddenly, like a stone thrown into still water. Trump is dead. I don't even remember who said it first. A neighbor? A headline whispered across the radio? All I know is that the words struck me like thunder. My heart pounded as I tried to grasp it. Could it be true? Could one of the most polarizing, powerful men in America, someone whose very name stirred endless debates, be gone just like that? The thought alone rattled me to my core. Something about hearing those words unsettled me deeper than I expected. It wasn't just political. It wasn't just curiosity. It felt like a sign. As I sat there, my mind spun with memories of past conversations, arguments, and news flashes. And then, without warning, an ache shot through my chest. It was sharp, searing, and unrelenting. I clutched at my shirt, gasping, as the room began to tilt and fade. My last conscious thought was still circling the rumor. Trump is dead. Darkness swallowed me. My body collapsed, but my awareness remained. I knew, somehow, that I had crossed a line I could not easily step back from. I was slipping out of my body, rising upward, while the weight of earth clung desperately to me. I saw people around me panicking, voices muffled, their hands shaking my shoulders. But they seemed so far away. My vision stretched beyond them. Then came the sound. It wasn't the beeping of machines or the chaos of voices. It was a silence so profound, it roared louder than thunder. And in that silence, I realized something with bone-deep certainty. While I had heard the words, "Trump is dead," I was about to face the reality of death myself. My heart was failing, and I was slipping into eternity. But eternity was not what I expected. The moment my heart gave way, I felt it. A tearing, a release, like my soul had been bound in ropes that suddenly snapped. One instant, I was lying on the ground, my chest heavy and lungs gasping for air, and the next, I was floating above it all, weightless, watching the scene below with terrifying clarity. My body lay limp, pale, and motionless. Strangers knelt beside me, pressing their hands against my chest, shouting words I could no longer hear clearly. Their voices were muffled, as though I stood behind glass. But here is what shocked me most. I felt no pain. The agony in my chest was gone. The panic was gone. Even the fear that had gripped me when I heard "Trump is dead" had lifted. What replaced it was a strange calm, as though I was being carried on invisible hands. I hovered there, torn between two worlds, watching the desperate struggle to pull me back, yet feeling drawn towards something far beyond the reach of those frantic hands. Colors began to shimmer around me, hues I cannot describe with earthly words. The walls of the room seemed to melt away, and suddenly, I was no longer bound by space. I could see further, feel deeper, and know more than I ever had before. My thoughts were no longer trapped inside my head. They expanded, like water rushing to fill an ocean. That's when I realized something chilling. Death was not silence, not nothingness. Death was awareness magnified. I was more alive outside of my body than I had ever been within it. And in that terrifying, wondrous moment, I remembered the words that had triggered everything. Trump is dead. I whispered the phrase inside myself, and an answer came. Not from me, not from any voice I knew, but from somewhere beyond. No, he is not the king. You are about to meet the living king. The words shook me, echoing through my soul with power that felt alive. I trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what was coming. I was not drifting into emptiness. I was being summoned. As I hovered above my body, the pull grew stronger. At first, it was like a gentle current tugging me forward, but soon it became a force impossible to resist. The room around me dimmed into shadows, and ahead of me opened a brilliance unlike anything I had ever seen. It wasn't like the sun, harsh and blinding. No, this light was alive. It pulsed with warmth, with love, with an intelligence that seemed to know me better than I knew myself. I tried to resist for a moment. Out of confusion, not rebellion. My mind clung to the earthly scene below. The faces bent over me, the hands pressing against my chest. The whispered panic. But compared to the pull of that light, those earthly ties felt thin, fragile, and powerless. It was as though I was being called by name, though no voice spoke it. The light was drawing me home. As I moved closer, I began to feel something stirring inside me. Every regret, every selfish thought, every careless word from my life seemed to rise to the surface. They clung to me like shadows, exposed in the radiance ahead. Yet, even as shame tried to grip me, the light offered something greater. Not condemnation, but a love that refused to let me go. It was as though the light saw every failure, but invited me forward anyway. In the distance, I began to hear a sound. It wasn't music as I knew it, but waves of harmony rolling from beyond the light. It seemed the very air sang, the very space trembled with worship. And somehow, in that song, I understood. I was not approaching a place. I was approaching a presence. The rumor that had shaken me just before I collapsed still echoed in my memory. Trump is dead. But here, in this realm, I realized the truth. Human leaders rise and fall, their names stir nations, but they cannot outlive the grave. Yet the voice inside me was right. I was about to meet the one who does not die, the living king. My pace quickened, not by choice, but by surrender. I was being drawn closer to a throne I could not yet see, and every step nearer made my soul tremble with both awe and fear. The light grew brighter until it surrounded me completely, wrapping me in a warmth so deep it felt as if it had been pursuing me my entire life. I was no longer hovering above my body. I had crossed into a place beyond space and time. The air shimmered like liquid gold, and every breath I drew filled me with peace, yet also with trembling awe. The ground beneath me wasn't like earth. It glowed, alive with color. Yet it wasn't really ground at all. It felt like walking on truth itself, solid, steady, eternal. Every step carried me deeper into the realm of light. And as I moved, I noticed I was no longer carrying the weight of regret or shame. The closer I came, the more those shadows fell away, burned off by the radiance around me. I felt lighter, purer, as though I was being remade with every breath. Then, ahead of me, the light parted, just enough to reveal a figure. At first, I could not lift my eyes. The majesty was overwhelming. It was not terror in the earthly sense, but a holy fear, the kind that makes you realize how small you are in the presence of greatness. The figure was robed in white, yet the robe itself seemed alive with fire and purity. His face shone so brightly I could not make out features. But I knew that I was standing before the king. And in that moment, Every rumor, every headline, every earthly whisper about who had died or who still lived seemed meaningless. Presidents and kings, leaders and rulers, all the names we cling to in this world. They are temporary. But here before me stood the one who cannot die, the one who conquered death itself. I fell to my knees without even thinking. It wasn't forced. It was the only possible response. My whole being cried out in silence. You are the king. You are the one I was meant to meet. Then he spoke. His voice was not like any voice I had ever heard. It was not loud, yet it shook me to my core. It was not soft, yet it carried infinite gentleness. It was not many voices, yet it echoed like 1,000 waters crashing in harmony. And he said, "Why do you fear the death of men when you have not yet faced your own eternity? Look at me. I live, I reign, and I hold the keys of life and death." At his words, I wept, not with sorrow, but with a release so overwhelming it felt as though every hidden burden I had ever carried was gone. I had heard rumors of earthly kings dying, but here I was, face to face with the living king who reigns forever. As I knelt before him, I felt stripped bare. There was no title, no reputation, no mask to hide behind. Just me, small, trembling, and overwhelmed by his majesty. The king's eyes, though brighter than fire, saw straight into the deepest corners of my soul. Every ambition, every careless word, every time I had worshipped men instead of God, all of it lay uncovered before him. And yet, astonishingly, I felt not rejection, but invitation. Then his voice came again, resonating through the very air of heaven. You heard the rumor of death, and it shook you. You feared because the death of one man seemed to signal the unraveling of nations. But I tell you this: the kingdoms of this world rise and fall. Their leaders are here today and gone tomorrow. Yet my kingdom has no end. His words cut deeper than any sword. I realized how much I had placed my trust, my emotions, even my hopes for the future, in the hands of earthly rulers. Whether I admired them or despised them, I had given them a power over my heart they were never meant to hold. And now here was the king, reminding me that the destiny of nations and of my own soul was not in the hands of presidents or kings, but in his alone. The king stretched out his hand, and for the first time, I saw the scars. Wounds that should have spoken of defeat instead radiated victory. My knees shook as he said, "Do you not see? Death has no hold on me. When you cling to men, you will be shaken by their death. But when you cling to me, you will find life everlasting." I wept because I understood then. The rumor of Trump is dead had stirred fear, but it was never about Trump. It was about me, about the fragility of life, about how easily I clung to the temporary and forgot the eternal. The king's presence was overwhelming, yet filled with love so fierce it felt like fire and water at the same time, burning away my pride, yet washing me in mercy. Around me the light swelled, and I heard what sounded like countless voices singing. They weren't singing about men or leaders or nations. Every note lifted only one name, the name of the king before whom I knelt. And in that moment, I realized something that shook me to my core. It wasn't enough to hear about him. It wasn't enough to admire him from a distance. The rule of his kingdom demanded surrender. The king lifted his hand, and the radiance around him seemed to ripple like waves across water. Suddenly, I was no longer just kneeling before him. I was being shown something. It was as if a veil tore open and I could see the earth, see America, stretched out beneath his gaze. I saw cities bustling with noise, streets filled with division, homes darkened by fear. I saw people clutching their flags, their slogans, their chosen leaders, as though these things could save them. And then I heard his voice again, clear as thunder yet tender as a whisper. See how they trust in men. See how they tremble when men fall. See how their hope rises and falls with the breath of mortals. I wept as I looked, for it was true. I saw how easily we are shaken by rumors, how one headline can stir panic, how the name of a president can stir either worship or hatred that consumes the soul. I saw families torn apart by arguments over politics, neighbors turned into enemies, even churches divided, not because of faith in the king, but because of loyalty to earthly rulers. And then the vision sharpened. I saw men who rose to power like tall trees, and just as quickly, I saw them fall. Cut down in an instant, their names fading like shadows at dusk. Some were beloved, some despised, but all shared the same fate. They could not escape the grave. And then I heard him speak again, his voice filled with sorrow, but also authority. Leaders are permitted for a season. Nations are given a time. But I alone hold eternity. Why then do they cling to men as if men are their saviors? Did I not tell them, do not trust in princes, in mortal men, who cannot save? The weight of his words crushed me. I realized how often I had fallen into the same trap, arguing, worrying, placing my hope in elections, headlines, or powerful figures, forgetting that none of them could deliver what only he could. Then the vision shifted once more. I saw a remnant, a small but radiant group of people, scattered across the nation. They weren't clutching flags or shouting slogans. They were on their knees, hands lifted, eyes fixed on the king. Their homes glowed with peace, even as the world raged. And I knew in that instant, these were the ones who had built their hope not on men, but on the living king. The king's voice thundered one more time. America trembles because it fears the death of men. But my kingdom does not tremble. Tell them, build on me, or they will fall with those they trust. I fell on my face, undone. The rumor of Trump is dead, that had so unsettled me on earth, now seemed small in the light of eternity. What truly mattered was not who lived or died among men, but whether we had surrendered to the one who lives forever. The vision of America faded, and I was once again kneeling before the king. His eyes, blazing with love and authority, seemed to pierce through me, and I knew he was about to show me something even more sobering. The light around him shifted, and I was drawn into another vision, this one not of nations, but of eternity itself. I saw two paths. One was wide and filled with multitudes of people. They carried banners of nations, names of leaders, even symbols of wealth and power. Their steps were hurried, almost frantic, but I could see where the path ended, in a chasm of darkness, flames leaping high and cries of regret echoing endlessly. These were the souls who had placed all their hope in the kingdoms of men, who lived and died believing that power, politics, and earthly glory could save them. And when those foundations crumbled, they fell with them. The second path was narrow, and far fewer walked upon it. These people carried no banners, no earthly crowns. Their hands were lifted, their eyes fixed forward. And at the end of that narrow path shone the same light I had seen, the throne of the King. Their faces glowed with joy, even though their journey had been harder. They had lost much in the world, but they had gained everything in eternity. The King's voice broke into my heart like fire. Every soul will face this choice. To cling to men is to share their end. To cling to me is to live forever. What use is it if they gain the whole world, yet lose their soul? Tears poured down my face as I realized how often I had walked dangerously close to the wide path, distracted by politics, by leaders, by the temporary storms of this life. I saw my own compromises, the times I had chosen loyalty to men over loyalty to the King. And yet, even as I wept, he looked at me not with condemnation, but with mercy. Then he showed me something even more personal. I saw myself on my deathbed, years from now. My children and grandchildren gathered around, and I realized, when my last breath leaves me, no president, no party, no leader's legacy will matter. The only thing that will matter is whether I had surrendered fully to him. My eternity would not be decided by the rumor of a man's death, but by my response to the one who defeated death. The King leaned closer, and his words etched themselves into my soul. Do not leave this place unchanged. You have seen the truth. Now live it. And when you return, tell them, the living King reigns. His hand reached out toward me, and in that touch, I felt both fire and peace. Judgment and mercy blended as one. The King's hand rested on me, and for a moment I thought I would never leave his presence again. A part of me longed to stay, to remain in that place where love was pure and life was eternal. But even as I clung to the light, I felt myself being pulled backward, as though an invisible current was carrying me away. The radiance began to fade, the sound of countless voices singing dimmed, and the vision of eternity slipped from my grasp. I cried out in my soul, "Please don't let me go." But his voice answered, gentle yet firm, "Your time is not yet. You must return. Tell them what you have seen. Tell them not to tremble at the death of men, but to bow before the living King." The next instant, I felt the crushing weight of my body return. My chest heaved, my lungs burned, and I gasped for air, as though I had been drowning. Hands pressed against me, voices shouted, and suddenly the muffled sounds I had left behind crashed back into focus. I was alive, though I knew I had crossed the line of death itself. As I lay there, weak but conscious, the rumor that had started it all, "Trump is dead," echoed faintly in my mind. But now it no longer carried fear. I understood the truth. Leaders rise, leaders fall, rumors swirl, but only one holds the power over life and death. Only one reigns beyond the grave. When I finally spoke, my words shocked even me. Through tears, I whispered, "I met him. I met the living King." Those around me thought I was delirious, but I knew better. I had seen the throne, I had heard his voice, and I had felt his scarred hand upon me. My life would never be the same. And so now I carry a message, not just for myself, but for everyone who will listen. Do not place your hope in men, for they will die. Do not cling to nations, for they will crumble. But cling to the King who conquered death, who lives forever, and who alone can save your soul. For I am living proof that death is not the end. I heard the rumor of death on earth, but in the realm beyond, I met the truth. The living king is alive, and he reigns forever.